guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with the second half of my January wrap-up. We are officially a month into 2023, which is absolutely crazy. How are we 31 days into this year? I don't know, but I've read so many books. I have 14 books to share with you, so I read a total of 29 books in the month of January, which I'm very happy for. I actually read a lot on audio, which I'm very happy about. I had a series binge, which I'm also happy about because one of my goals is to read more series like all the way through and trying out new authors, which I did as well, and some new favorites because I did do a reading log for reading my new releases that were on my TBR, especially arcs that I had. I still have a lot to still in the last day, like today, the 31st, the day I'm filming this. So many books came out today, and I have a couple that I didn't read yet that I have to. In February, we have tons of new releases that of course I forgot to talk about on my February TBR, but there's a lot that are exciting. So I will go ahead and get to the 14 books that I read this month and chat with you about what I thought of them. So the first one, I actually am so excited for me and my journey with this author because this one was the pick for my Patreon exclusive book club, The Fallen Book Club, which is where I invite an author friend onto the live show and we chat about a book that they really wanted to read. So I had Catherine Cowles on. I mean, like, I'm wearing my Shattered Sea sweatshirt. Today is her release day. I'm very excited for her. I'll talk about her book in a little bit, but she is a Nora Roberts fangirl. Like, Nora is her #1 favorite author, so she picked The Obsession for us to read. I know this is one of her favorite books, and I am now so excited to read more from Nora. I've gone through a very interesting reading journey this past year where I'm so much more into small town, cozy, and romantic suspense. So Nora is small town romantic suspense a lot of the times, and so we read The Obsession. I gave it 4 stars. We chatted about it with my patrons. Some of them hated it, some of them loved it, but I had a really fun time reading this. I do think that for her, the romances typically take a backseat to the plot, or they're like not as prominent, so they're like equal to the plot. And I was listening to actually the Fated Mates podcast episode with Nora. They did a Trailblazer season where they were interviewing a bunch of very prolific authors. I had already listened to the Beverly Jenkins episode, but I went back and listened to the Nora one. She's hilarious, and she says she doesn't really write romance anymore. She writes fiction with romantic plots or relationship plots. So this one, though, I would say is a romance. In the beginning, we start off strong. So she is like 9, and she thinks that her family has hidden her birthday present in this shed that her dad was going to. So she was following him one night because she's like, oh, maybe he's going to get my present. Maybe I'm getting a bike. She followed him and realized he was actually murdering and horrifically treating women in this basement. And so she finds one just battered, torn, and naked down in the basement, and she takes her to the police station and turns her father in. And so now we get to see a lot of this book is her past. So about 100 pages is her growing up until we get to be an adult. So she has to deal with the fallout of people knowing who she is. Her dad was a serial killer. He murdered so many people and nobody knew, and how her mother deals with it because he was definitely verbally abusive to them and not a good person, and her mom was still adamant that she had to be faithful to him and be his wife, and so that was very stressful for her. But they moved in with her uncle and his husband, and it was super sweet, and she has a brother, and I wish Nora did series with these because I need her brother's story. He becomes an FBI profiler. I love that. But then we get her moving to this small town and finally settling down and buying a home. She's been moving around her whole life because she never wants to settle down and have roots. They wrote a book about her dad, they did a movie about her dad, and she's just like, I can never escape it. So she wants to be anonymous, moves here, and falls for this very infuriating hero who I did not like him when we first met him. He definitely grew on me, though. He had a lot more depth than what we originally saw. Her car like broke down or got a flat tire or something, and he's a mechanic, so he came to help her out. And he was like really not attractive when they first met. He's like, what's a pretty girl like you doing here? And I was like, no. But he ended up being really awesome, and I really liked his character. And she got a dog in here as well because he found a dog, but he didn't want to keep it because he was still grieving his dog that died. So she reluctantly takes it, and it's adorable. And there was so much I loved in here. And then someone is now killing women in their town the same way her dad did. But her dad's in prison still. So who is doing that? And it was a lot of fun. I really like this book. I do think that the romance took a while while to pick up, and the middle was pretty slow, but overall I'm excited. I am for sure gonna read The Witness next because every single person has been telling me that's their favorite, so that's high on my TBR. But I'm glad I read Nora, and I've already spent way too much time talking about that, but it was super fun getting to chat with Catherine with my patrons, and I can't wait to read more. Then I picked up Little Lies by Helena Hunting. So it's so funny because these next the three books that I'm talking about, Nora, this one, and the next one, are all because of Catherine Cowles. So I did a 12 Friends Recommend 12 Reads on Instagram, and this was one of Catherine's favorite reads of last year, and so she told me I had to read it. I got the audiobook. It was like $2 if you already had the ebook, which you can take out on Kindle Unlimited. So I bought the audio for $2. Teddy Hamilton narrates. He's amazing. The angst in this book is so good. So I think this is a next gen book to her other hockey series. It's Helena Hunting. She writes it as H Hunting because she says her angsty stuff is written as H Hunting. So I was just watching the live show that I think it's Helena. I always say Helena. Helena and Catherine did a live show yesterday, the day I'm filming this, together on Instagram about both of their new releases. And so Helena is hilarious, and she writes H Hunting for her like angstier, longer stuff, and this one takes place in college, and I've talked about this in so many recommendations videos now because I'm obsessed. I gave it 5 stars. I've ordered my paperback. I ordered the next one too because people told me I'm gonna love it as well, and this one, they have been family friends for a very long time, and the heroine, was actually kidnapped when almost kidnapped when she was young, and so what happens is her family becomes very overprotective, but she also is now suffering from anxiety and panic attacks because of what happened to her, and the only thing that can keep her grounded is the hero, and the parents don't want them to rely on each other and be each other's crutch, so they separate them. And now we are at when they're both in college, and she is living with her brother and some relatives, and he's living like right across the street at the same college, and she is furious with him because he did something to break her heart 2 years ago, and we don't know that until like later on in the book, and it's their time reconnecting, and they are forced together a lot. He ends up having to move into their house, and she's all angry, and there's a lot of overprotective sports guys, hockey players, football players, one's a figure skater, all living around her, and she is falling in love with Cody, and it is so good, and it gets so spicy. I gave it 5 stars. I loved every second of it. Highly recommend checking this out. It's definitely much angstier than what I know from Helena Hunting because I've only read Pucked and I think a couple others by her, but love this one. I can't wait to get to the next one. Then I have a copy here. Let me grab it. I ended up reading Whispers of You by Catherine Cowles. So this one comes out today, the day I'm filming this. I was sent an early copy and I got an early e-arc, and so I read my ebook early. This is the gorgeous hardback she's now selling. So it has like the people cover here and then the discreet cover on the dust jacket. It is gorgeous, and I gave this one 5 stars. I love this. It's a second chance romance between high school sweethearts. They were just so in love with each other in high school, but then there was someone who was murdering people in town, and so these two boys go on this murdering spree in town, and they try to kill our heroine, and the hero was supposed to be there like for a dinner date, and he was late because he was doing something else. He's on like the town search and rescue team, so he was doing something else, and she ends up being shot by them, but then she survives. And so the hero sticks around for when she recovers, but he was pulling away, shutting down because he felt guilty. He didn't want to lose her, and so he left before he could lose her, and he has not been back for 10 years, and he is back in town because his father has a heart attack, and he wants to see how his family is, and he's trying to reconcile with the people he left. Everybody's really mad at him that he did leave and abandon them, and he reconnects with the heroine, and then someone is trying to pick off the survivors of that shooting 10 years ago. So they have to figure out who it is. I was shocked when I saw it. I was not expecting the killer to be who it was. I love a good romantic suspense, and this one's definitely much heavier on the romantic suspense than some of her other books are, so I actually really enjoyed it. My only complaint is I think that she took the hero back a little too quickly, considering he just like dipped and broke her heart. In the past, I was like, make him grovel a little bit more. I would have liked that because they got together pretty early on in here, and the rest focused on the suspense. But I love, like I said, I am like so into romantic suspense right now, so I love this. 5 stars. Definitely check it out. Then I read Just Prevail by Debney Perry. I forgot I have physical copies of all these. So this actually releases today as well, and I did not get on the ARC team. I was very sad that they didn't have room for me because you sign up through like the Valentine PR through the PR company, and they can only fit so many people getting ARCs, so I was not chosen. I was very sad, but then she dropped the audiobook 2 weeks early, and so I went and spent one of my credits on this audiobook, and I will say I did not love the narrators. The male specifically I really didn't like, but the heroine was just okay. And so I already like wasn't super into the story because I was like, ugh, these narrators are not good, but I wanted to read it already, so I listened to the audiobook. And we know that Jasper and Eloise were married. They got married in Vegas. We learned that in the previous book, and this one's their book, and it was good. I would have loved to see more of them when they got married in Vegas and seeing that connection between them and what actually happened there, because we just kind of get thrown in and we're very quickly brought through what had happened and like move on. And I'm like, but I would have loved to see what prompted them to do it, why they're so into each other. And then they decide to stay married because Eloise wants to inherit the hotel from her family, and she wants like their respect and them to think that she can be taken seriously. So she doesn't want to like get a divorce and everyone know about it. So she wants to stay married to him. So they stay married, she moves in with him, and it goes on from there. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. I just wanted a little bit more in their connection and in the plot. I feel like the other books were just so strong. Like book 3 was so angsty, book 2 was so sweet and so good, and this one didn't give me the same feelings as the previous books did. So it was still a really fun story about 2 people getting married, and it was super spicy, but I wanted a little bit more. And also we had other woman drama at the end that I was not a fan of. I don't like over-the-top vindictive characters who are trying to sabotage someone else's relationship, and that's really what we got here, so I wasn't the biggest fan, so I gave it 4 stars overall. Then I read The Duke Gets Even by Joanna Shupe. Super excited for this one. This one also came out last week, I believe. It came out January 24th, and I've been so anticipating this book because it's Nellie's book. It's book 4 in the series. Nellie was definitely the most wild of the heroines, the one who was most exploring her sexuality and not caring about society, and it starts out with her meeting the Duke on a midnight swim, and they share a kiss, and she's like, we'll meet back here tomorrow, and he's like, okay. And it turns out he is trying to court her friend, and so they figure that out the next day, and she's like, oh my gosh, no, I am not like reputable enough for you, I'm not wealthy enough for you, like you need someone else, like not like me. And so he though is falling hard for Nellie, and I will say the first like 200 pages of this book is very boring. I did not love anything that was really happening. We just like kind of are just going along with them with not a whole lot of plot. But then the last 150 pages, the Duke ends up wanting to go after Nellie and wanting to be with her, and Nellie was the one pushing him away, saying it can't work, like we're too different, I love America, you have to go back to England, like it's not gonna work. She is also really big in educating women about women's reproductive rights, and so there's that whole plot line too, but that doesn't come in until the last 150 pages. If all of that was through the whole story, I would have loved it, but it wasn't. So I gave it 3.5 stars. It's not my favorite in the series. I love books 2 and 3 just so much more than this. It was still a solid, good read. I rounded up to 4, but I wanted more. Then I listened to the audiobook of Lie for a Lie by Helena Hunting because this one is the parents' book of Little Lies. So I was like, let's try this out. So it was actually free to listen on Kindle Unlimited. It was KU Read and Listen. So I downloaded it, and this one is a secret baby, but it wasn't like on purpose. So the heroine is going to Alaska to do some master's work, and the hero has a family like house there. I was gonna say cottage, but like it's big. It's not a cabin. He's wealthy. He's a professional hockey player. And so they meet on their way there, and she has gotten like the worst place to stay. It did not look like that online. She doesn't even have warm water, I think. And so he checks up on her, and they spend a lot of time together, and they sleep together. And then they go their separate ways because the hero has a family emergency, and they don't leave a way for them to contact one another. And so they never see each other. A year later, she is working in Chicago, and that's where he lives. And they reconnect, and she had actually had a baby. His baby, but she didn't know his name, she didn't know how to find him, and so now he has to come to terms with the fact that he has a child and that he can finally like be with her again because he really liked her. And it was nice. Like it was just like a nice sweet romance, but like I was like, give me the angst that Little Lies had. And so their son together is actually the hero of Little Lies, and so I gave it 4 stars. Like it wasn't bad, there was nothing wrong with it, but it was just like a nice cute story. And I like that he was a hockey player. We got a little bit of hockey in it, but I just wanted a little bit more. Like, give me some more tension and angst in there, and I would have loved it, but it was a nice story. 4 stars. Okay, so then I'll just go ahead and talk about these 3 together. I read the Shifting Fate series by Tessa Hale. My library actually had all 3 on audio, and the author had sent me these copies a couple months ago, and so I was like, perfect time to listen to these. I was doing a lot of puzzling, so I was doing a puzzle, and I just listened to these and on my way to and from work. And these are actually New Adult in high school, so they're seniors in high school. I would have loved the series more if they were just aged up a little bit, because I didn't care about anything in their high school. I didn't care about like the mean girls in their high school. I didn't care about like the fact that she was failing a class at one point. I was like, okay, these are Why I Choose romances, and they are werewolf romances. So in the beginning, I don't want to give too much away about like the whole series, so I'll just tell you what the first one's about and then my ratings of all of them. So in Spark of Fate, she loses her sister to a terrible car accident, and so she wants to start over. The family is grieving. She goes to a new school and instantly has this like bond with these guys, and she feels like literal like electricity when she touches them, and she's super intrigued by them. They start spending time together, and it turns out they're her mates. Like, she has 5 mates and they are all werewolves. So she is learning about this world. Like, she is a human. She is like, I don't know anything about werewolves, like what the heck. And no one's ever had, I think it's very, very rare to have 5 mates. And so all this stuff is happening, and she's like figuring out who her real birth parents are, because then it comes out that she was adopted, and she's still grieving her sister, and we go through that. So I really liked all the heroes. I think there were, though, because there were 5, there was one I loved because he was like the broody broken hero who was like a feral wolf, and I loved him. And there were a couple that like blended together in my mind. They weren't like special enough. But book 1 I gave 4 stars. I really, really liked it. I really liked the introduction to the world. Crazy cliffhangers on all of them. I really enjoyed this one. Book 2 I gave 3 stars. It definitely felt like a filler book, like, oh, it's just here so we can get to like that actual action at the end. So I gave it 3. It was just okay. It still kept me wanting to read, and I still really liked the relationships being developed, but I wanted a little bit more. And then book 3 I gave 3.5, rounding up to 4 stars. I did really like it. I do think that the end battle scene went over a little quickly. These are super short though, so you can't expect too much from the story because they're like less than 300 pages. The audiobooks are like 6.5 hours long, so I flew through them. But I think this was a really, really fun series with fated mates and werewolves. Like, I love a Why Choose romance where they're fated, because then it like makes more sense in my mind that they would be with like 5 guys at a time. But I had a lot of fun with the series. Overall, I would give it a 4-star total. I did like the first book in the Elemental series better, which I think is not on audio yet. I think they only have the first book up on audio, and the second one might have just released in that series, but I like that series better so far. But this one was fun. If you like werewolf, Why Choose, fated mates, check this out. And then I read A Pessimist Guide to Love by Jennifer Hartman. I had the arc of this, and this one is Jennifer Hartman's newest duet. This is book 1. I gave it 5 stars. This book was so good. I've also talked about in a few videos already, but this one, the heroine and the hero were really close growing up. She was best friends with his sister, and they were like almost kind of becoming a thing when they were like teenagers, and then the sister is gone. All we know is that something happened to her, and then his family ended up moving away, and the heroine ended up moving away eventually, and now they are adults, and the heroine is back in town, and she buys the hero's old house, and she tracks him down and asks for a job at his garage, because he has a garage, and there's an opening for like the secretary front desk position. He initially says no, and she's like, okay, and then he feels bad, and he's like, okay, fine, as long as you don't talk about Emma, we cannot talk about her. So we don't know what happened to his sister at all, and he's grumpy, he's tattooed, he's just angry at the world, and she starts working for him, and they end up falling for each other, and he's like, I'm not good enough for you, you deserve something better. It's Grump Sunshine. She just wants to reconnect, and they're falling for each other. This definitely ends on a cliffhanger, but I love the emotions in here. I gave it 5 stars. I will go and talk about book 2. I did not love this one. I got an arc of this one as well. It came out about a week and a half afterwards, and this one had just a different tone, and I've seen some friends give it 3 stars like I gave it, or some friends gave it 5 stars. They loved it, but I feel like there was so much potential that could have been done, especially with what happened to Emma, and it felt very just like lackluster. Like, it's been this whole mystery, and they're like, oh, when this happened. I was like, but I thought it was gonna be something like mind-blowing, like oh my gosh, and like twisted and like shocking, but that's what I've come to expect from Jennifer Hartman, and that wasn't what happened, so I was a little disappointed. And I didn't love how it just then focused on Cal a lot, the hero, and his problems, and that's what this book primarily focused on. I feel like Lucy really fell to the wayside, and we didn't get to see a lot of her character as much. So this one, I gave 3 stars. I was very sad. I loved book 1, but the duet did not finish how I wanted it to. Then I read Stormy by J.L. Seegers for the Ravished by Romance book club, and this one I gave 3 stars. I'm so sad I didn't love this one. I could see the potential and why people loved it so much, because it is a dead husband's best friend romance. The best friend has been in love with her since before she met her husband, and one when she started dating her husband, he immediately was like, okay, I hate you so I can protect myself. And so she has always butted heads with him and hated him, and now it's been 4 years since her husband died, and they are working on a project together and end up having a friends with benefits situation and falling in for more. This book was way too long. We had way too many steamy scenes. I get that the point was like they had this physical attraction and chemistry that brought them back together and into this relationship, but it was too much. I ended up skimming a lot of them because I was like, another sex scene, another one, and I would have loved way more flashbacks throughout the book. We got a couple really important ones in the beginning that hinted at certain things, and then we never addressed those until the very end. And I would have loved that throughout it, to see a lot more of their connection, especially the longing and the pining and the angst from the hero's perspective. I would have loved that. So there were just some things that needed to be rearranged and cut out and edited, and this book would have been so good. But overall, there was just, but there was so much depth to it and so much going on, like with the hero and his family and not being wanted to be like his dad, and the heroine and her family, and I wanted to love it, but I didn't. But I do want to read more from this author. I feel like once she gets more writing, because I was told this is her first book, once she starts writing more, I think she has the potential of being amazing. So I'm excited to read more from her to see how her writing grows. Then I ended up reading Reckless by Amanda Quick. I read this one for the Historical Hellions book club and it was amazing. 5 stars. I am obsessed with Amanda Quick. Her romances, most of them are really good. I read one that I really didn't like because it was really boring, but this one, our heroine is a book collector. She loves collecting rare books, and she is tracking down this book she gave to someone who was in love with her, and she gave him a gift as he went away, and he ended up being murdered by pirates, and she is horrified that his death is her fault. So she's like, I need to track down this book that I've heard is back in England. I gave it to him and now someone's selling it. It'll help me track down his killer. And so she asks our hero, who also collects rare books, but he is super wealthy now, but no one knows he's wealthy because he lost all of his fortune from his father and had to sell off his books, and now he's back in town and everyone's like, oh, he doesn't have any money. He actually does. And so the heroine is reckless. She puts herself in all these situations. She's not afraid to track down things herself and go into dangerous situations. And so the hero reluctantly agrees. He has secrets of his own though, and they start falling in love in the process. They actually get married like pretty early on. They have like a kind of marriage of convenience because of something that happened, and I loved it though. I loved how the hero treated her. He was just like infatuated with her but didn't like admit that he loved her until the end. He definitely was attracted to her, and the heroine was so fun. There's so much suspense in here and action, and it was so good. And there were like 3 separate villains that like really kept you on your toes. I loved it. We have an amazing step back. This was so good. Then I listened to the audiobook. I don't remember the name. I have not caught up on my digital journal. I need to do that this week, but that's why I'm not using it for this video. I read Rogue Protector. This one was an audiobook I listened to. I wanted to listen to more romantic suspense. My Hoopla had this. I downloaded it, and it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. This one, our heroine is a scientist and she's researching like lilacs or something in the mountains of Mexico to try to solve Parkinson's disease. Like, okay, so she is there and someone is trying to like poach the flowers, something, and so dangerous things happen. The hero was Air Force, I think, and then he had to quit because he left because of a family emergency. And when we like learn all of this, I'm like, should we know all this already? Because he is so affected and traumatized by what happened to him in one of the other series. And so this is a spin-off series, but I feel like we should have read or been told to read the other series because he went through a lot. He had to like go after his sister who his stepbrother was trying to kill, so now his stepbrother's dead because of him, and he's very traumatized over this, but we didn't see it. We were just told about it, and I'm like, I feel like I need to know all this before this, so I felt like I was missing a lot, and this was very insta-love. They fell for each other pretty quickly. There was some suspense in here, but like it was just okay. It was like nothing special about this book. I wasn't like dying to read it. I was just listening like, okay, this is a story, so I gave it 3 stars. And I don't know if I'll read more by this author. We'll see. And the last book I read this month is because my live show's tomorrow and I'm only halfway through book 4, but I'm gonna get through 4 and 5 soon, and that is Quarter Miles by Daphne Perry. I'm doing a read along with Tori from Novel Life, and these are really short. So they are like less than 250 pages each, so they're pretty short. It is similar to the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, but with a car. So they all lived in a junkyard together, and one of the girls lived in a Cadillac, and she ended up becoming really wealthy and redid the Cadillac, left her husband, and fell in love with someone driving this Cadillac to a friend. So now they're all driving it to the next person. Once they meet that person takes it, drives to the next one. So this one is the friends to lovers romance, and I gave it like 3.5 stars. I was really excited for this one because she's the one who works at a hotel and is really in love with her best friend slash roommate who also works at a hotel. His family like owns it. It's like a very high class, expensive resort, and she has been in love with him, and he brings someone else to family dinner, which you only do with someone serious. So she's like, he's not into me, I'm leaving. So she decides to go on a road trip with the car to the next person, and he crashes the road trip, so they go together. There were things in here that I wasn't the biggest fan of. Specifically, he reveals a secret that he kept from her, and it like was shocking that he would have chosen that. Like, I hate it when one of the characters like makes a decision for the other one without consulting them and is like, I know what's best for you. I hated that. He did that, and she forgave him way too easily, and we skipped over a lot of the connection between them. Like, at one point they do give in to like their desires and sleep together, and they're like, oh yeah, we spent the whole day together, and I was like, but can we see this? Like, I'm not feeling this connection between you two. I still see you as friends. Like, does he really feel that way? I felt like his feelings were a little forced with her, and I didn't feel that connection between them. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I wanted to love it more, but so far 1 and 2 were 4-star reads. This one's 3-star, but I'm enjoying 4. I'm halfway through 4 and I really like it so far. So we'll see how the rest of the series goes, but I'll definitely have it in my next wrap up, and I should have already read it by the time this video goes up because I need to read it by the 1st, which is tomorrow. We'll see if that happens. And those are all the books that I read in the second half of January. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are, or what you read this month. I would love to hear, and that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Bye.